Hi, everybody. I'm Tamara Zoner.
And I'm John Davis.
Welcome to Spirit Cafe.
Come in, sit down, and
grab a cup of love.
A Spirituality Without the Guilt podcast. Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to Spirit Cafe. It is a pleasure and an honor to be here with you this morning. I'm very excited this morning because I get to speak with a good friend, the avatar of positive attitude, the guru of goodness, the one, the only, the lovely, and the powerful Miss Tamara Zoner. Good morning, Tamara. How are you this morning?
Good morning, John. I'm highly amused by that introduction. How are you?
I got a new one for you. The avatar of positive attitude, the guru of goodness.
Guru of goodness. I love it.
I love that we can just joke around and have a good time and have conversation. And I think of Spirit Cafe as a place where we have spiritual conversations over a cup of Joe. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And so I think it's just a comfortable place to be. So the topic that I wanted to throw at you this morning, and of course I'm throwing it to you blindly, of course, is because that's what I do, right? Just like your intros, I throw them at you blindly as well. I really think that, and this is something that people have talked to me about in my private readings. How do you bring spirituality into your day? What are your daily practices, rituals, habits, things that bring you to that spiritual place? Do you have any specific ones that you do, or?
Yeah, I've sort of shortcutted my ritual over the last few years. I used to have quite an elaborate one where I would take about 15 minutes and I would light candles, and with each candle that I lit, I would, ask for guidance, and I would ask that only spirit that was for the highest good of all would be in my space, and I would burn incense and cleanse the energy of my room where I would yoga and meditate. Now I just get on the mat. Unless I'm doing specifically like Reiki or a specific journaling session or meditation. But for the most part now, my practice is to get on that yoga mat. And then when I finish with yoga, I meditate, and then I continue my exercise routine. So it's become streamlined. And, part of me maybe wants to go back to that more elaborate ritual, because it was a very conscious way of connecting with all that is source, yada yada, for me, and I really enjoyed it, and it made a major difference in the way that I moved through my day. And once that was established within me, then I sort of dropped off that ritual because I didn't like it. I already had it, but now it's been a while. So maybe I'll bring that back into practice for a bit and see what happens.
It to me, it's fascinating. I talk to people all the time, and they have this list of things they do. And I always liken it back to when I first started learning to meditate. I learned my mantra, and then I learned my breathing technique, and then I learned to I was listening to guided meditations, and there was all these different meditation styles and practices that I would try to do. And what was really fascinating was the idea that over the course of time, I realized that they all were leading me to the same exact place. They're all leading me to the place of the releasing and letting go and just dropping into that space. And what happened was, over the course of time, I realized that I could bypass all of those techniques and all those modalities, and I could just go into my meditation room and just bypass all that and drop right into the space. And it seems like when what you were just saying is your practices kind of streamline themselves. And I think it's because you come to a space where, okay, I know what this is, and I know how to connect already. So I don't necessarily need them. Sometimes they're comforting. Sometimes they're a way. And sometimes when things get streamlined like that, you can tend to get lazy on the doing it the way you know how to do it. So going back and getting that habit again is really important. For me, I get up in the morning, I wander out, and I look outside, I look at the weather, and then I go into my meditation room and I meditate. And I just meditate for about between 30 and 40 minutes. Wow. And the reason I do that is because I find that if I don't give myself that spiritual practice that in the morning, my day gets frantic, my day gets frazzled. And by coming into the world from that calm, loving space, and I don't call it meditating, I call it sitting in love. So I just go sit in love and it's basically like setting the vibration for the day. I'm just gonna have a loving day.
Love that. Yeah.
But my other spiritual practice that I think that people miss out on and realize that when they ask me this question of how do I bring my spirituality to my day and what are the practices, one of the most spiritual practices I have, and it's probably the most impactful spiritual practice I have, is I smile at people. And that to me is a spiritual practice, because you can sit in love and you can get to that space of love inside yourself. You come to that thing, but it's the sharing of that experience, the sharing of that love, the sharing of that joy. And I often talk about going into the grocery store and before I going in there, exhaling and getting that feeling and then walking in, right? But I think that the practice of just saying, I am being loving today and stepping out in the world. And then I, of course, at the end of my day, before I drift off to sleep, I end my day with another meditation. And then I also have one more little ritual, but it's sort of a natural ritual as opposed to it being a ritual. It's more of something that I have noticed and that I look forward to. It's watching the stages of consciousness as I drift off to sleep.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's fascinating. It's really
I don't think it takes me long enough to fall asleep to do that.
Yeah, what's interesting, the time seems really long, but all the wives that I've had have always been like, how can you fall asleep so fast? And because I lay down and start snoring, basically. That's how it seems to be anyway. Right. But for me, I lay down in the bed and I'm consciously aware of being of the world. I'm thinking about the things that happened during my physical day. And then the next thing that happens is that there's a consciousness shift where suddenly I feel inside my body, but not of it, and looking at the back of my eyelids. And then that becomes a feeling. And then the next thing that happens is suddenly the external world suddenly feels like it's right here. It's real close. And then I start seeing colors. And as the colors start to happen, I drift off into sleep. And it happens every night. And I look at that as the stage of the physical world transitioning into the body, out of the body, but still in the consciousness of the body, shifting into everything drawing in, and then going into the etheric and experiencing the other side. So that if that's a ritual, I don't know, but it's something that I've noticed that's happened.
Sounds like it. Yeah, it's something you do every night.
Yeah. It's become a ritual, I guess.
And you're conscious about it.
Right, I'm very conscious about it. And then the rest of the time, it really is just living, loving, letting my son know that I love him. I think that's a spiritual practice.
I love that you frame the smiling at people and just letting your son know that you love him as a spiritual practice. I wouldn't have thought about those things. I do talk about smiling at people, very purposefully when I teach happiness, because finding purpose and meaning in each and every day is part of being a very happy person. And so I'll say, it doesn't really matter what you do. It could just be that you smile at everyone you pass. That is purposeful and meaningful. And you're right. It also is a spiritual practice. And I think that's really beautiful. I think that I notice, and before you mentioned that as a spiritual practice, I didn't think of it as a spiritual practice, but one of the things that I do when I'm working with people, or even just talking to someone who wants attention, is that I will kind of drop in, and I've never really described this before, so it's interesting to think about. I kind of drop in so that I'm out of my head and into my heart and fully present for them. And I would say that is definitely a spiritual practice. And I do that with my clients, of course, and I do that in my meetup groups and workshops and such. But I also do it just when I'm talking to someone, especially in the senior communities. I'll notice that I really want to pause and drop into my higher self so that I can really see them and be present with them and for them.
And it's lovely. That's lovely because you recognize the concept that everybody wants to be seen
Mm.
and be part of that process. And you're like, I'm consciously being here and present. Now, of course, we talk about, the present moment being the only time that you have thought, word, and deed. It's actually the only moment you're conscious. So it's the only spiritual moment you have. So by consciously getting your mind out of what you're going to do next or what's happened to you in the past and getting very present, to me, that is a spiritual practice.
Yeah.
And, driving to school and in your head and realize that your child who's sitting next to you, needs to hear some positive reinforcement, or, that is a spiritual practice to me, because it's like, spirituality lives in one moment, and it's the only moment we have, the God moment, the I am moment, not the I will be or I was moment. But
Right.
you have the act of being firmly present, just like you said, the act of being firmly present and seeing not only your needs, but the needs of others is a very spiritual practice in my mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love that you mentioned the, child in the car on the way to school. I do that with my son after we drop off my daughter, who just hates all that stuff. So I sprinkle it in just ever so slightly. But with my son, as soon as we're on the way to his school, I'll always ask him, what are you looking forward to today? So that he can gear his mind toward, oh, right, there's going to be something good that happens. And then every single night at dinner, I asked my kids, okay, what was the best part of your day? And if they had a really rough day, I say, or what's something you're grateful for today?
Nice.
So they'd have to tune in, and sometimes it's just the cats. Like, this cat was cute. We've made a rule that they can only use the cats once a week, but because
I
it was
reminds me of the Anchorman movie. I love Lamp. Right.
It was like, this cat was cute today. Okay.
Right. No. That not good enough.
Right,
Love
exactly.
something
Like,
better.
you
Love something else.
to try a little harder than that,
Right,
and
right.
parenting is a spiritual practice. Wouldn't you agree? I mean,
Absolutely.
if we're doing it right, I'll put little quotes around the word right, but if we're doing it right, it really is a spiritual practice, because we are imparting all the wisdom that we've gathered over the course of our decades and sharing it with them, and then being willing to step into learning from them, which is the real spiritual practice of parenting. Right?
Huge. You realize that the whole entire world is your teacher.
Yes.
You get to learn from everything.
Oh, I gotta say, I didn't know I'd tip this toward parenting as a topic, but I have to say that one of the most important spiritual practices that I have as a parent is remembering that my journey is not their journey, that they have their own. And that is really challenging and liberating as a practice, so I don't anymore take on all of my older daughter's stuff, who deals with depression and anxiety, right? Like, that's not mine. That's her journey. My journey is to support her as her parent. And I know for sure that soul chose me as her guide in this life. And so I can only help her if I am conscious and remember that we have two different journeys going on.
Right. And what's great about that is you have to meet them. If you're your children, you have to meet them where they are.
Yeah.
And realize that they may not be able to take the leap that you want them to take, or the idea is to be totally in a spiritual practice is to realize exactly what you just said. They're in a different place. This morning, and it's interesting we're having this conversation right now, because this morning drive, which is the way it seems to work, doesn't it? Because spiritual practices takes us to what we should talk about. This morning, I'm driving to school with my son, and I totally get that my son is a very, very science-minded kid. He is constantly coming at me with the latest scientific thing he learned that he's so excited about. And I am like, the artist, singer. I used to be a singer, but a painter,
Mhm.
actor. I'm like an arts guy, not a science guy. But I'm fascinated by noetic science
Mhm.
because it bridges the gap between science and spirituality. So this morning, driving to school, I started he started saying something about, I forget where he was, and I said, "You ever heard of noetic science?" And I started explaining to him that they can measure thought now, and thoughts will stop at the point they focus and all this stuff. And then I said, kind of reminds me of, and I pulled out my Buddha quotes and my God, my Krishna quotes, and I
Mhm.
said, kind of reminds me of that. It's kind of interesting how it's bridging that gap. And to me, it was like, in that conversation, we were talking science for him, spirituality for me, and we
Mhm.
were coming together in one specific place. And so
Nice.
it was a chance of bridging the gap, and not only coming at it from his point of view, but my point of view as well, and finding a place where we can come together. And I think that's a huge spiritual practice in the world. You go out in the world and you find the place where you can come together with people
Mhm.
rather than judge or fear. Find the way that you can come at everybody from a place of love.
Yeah, if everybody practiced that a little more.
Wouldn't that
Whew,
be beautiful?
what a
Right.
difference. Yeah.
That is the key to your daily spiritual ritual and practice is if you can make your daily spiritual ritual and practice uh always loving,
Mhm.
and like getting up and doing your yoga is loving for you, right?
Yes,
And getting up and
absolutely.
meditating is loving for me,
Mhm.
and it you have to realize that love has to flow equally to you and from you. And so
Yeah. I
you
always
can't
say to you and through you.
to you and through you, right. And you can't give up yourself for other people, but
Mm-mm.
and you can't give up other people for yourself.
Right. No, your self-care is a spiritual practice.
Right.
It really is because, I always compare, well, people say, oh, if your cup is full or my cup is empty so you fill your cup and you fill it so high that the cup is always full and you serve from the overflow.
There you go.
That,
There you go. Great
that,
analogy.
thank you. That is where I believe we're meant to serve from, not giving ourselves away to people, because then the quality of the care that we give isn't great. But if
Right.
we keep our cups full and serve from that overflow, then the quality of the love we give and the care we give is remarkable and felt, you know.
Right. And so that said, then a spiritual practice should be to actively and consciously be your authentic self.
Mhm.
Because if your authentic self, is loving and enjoying something, then you're going to excel there. And if someone's oppressing you and you're allowing that, my authentic self is like, I'm not going to allow myself to be repressed because that's not letting me be authentic. Because to be authentic, to truly be authentic, you are experience the things that you are joyful about and
Mhm.
love. And
Mhm.
sometimes that's hard too.
Well, yeah, some people don't know who their authentic self is. And
Right.
so maybe the practice at that point is simply asking, who am I? Who am I? That's a meditation practice that goes back forever.
Mhm.
And it's simply sitting in that quiet space asking, who am I? What do I really want? And even the passion test that I give, I'm excited because I have my first in-person workshop in over 2 years coming
Oh,
up on
nice.
May 1st. Yeah. So, but even that is a spiritual practice. That is asking, what do I want to be? Who do I want to be? How do I want to feel? What do I want my life to look like? What do I want to create in this experience? And getting to know yourself and honoring what you want life to look and feel like is really a spiritual practice. And
Mhm.
people who are, focused on achieving in the external, that's not so much a spiritual practice. It's focusing on connecting with the internal and being guided from that and creating from that space that is a spiritual practice, which is what makes life so magical, right? It's when we're connected and living authentically, but a lot of people don't know what that feels like yet. And so I just want those of you out there going, oh, I don't know what my authentic self would do or say. I don't know my authentic self yet. You can get there. And that's the practice.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about the passion tests and everything is that they help you find what will make you joyful.
Yeah, it's
Right?
reconnecting to that spark, because some people will tell me, but I don't even know. I don't even know what my passions are.
Hmm.
And I say, that's okay. I can help you with that.
Right.
And it's really just tapping in to all the things that you loved and the hopes you had and the dreams you had that you have let life cover over.
Mm.
And so we just uncover those again. And, one spiritual practice people could do is simply asking, what makes me come alive?
Right.
And it
And
could
and
be
I actually, when I'm working with clients, I often get people say, "Well, I don't know what I like. I don't know what I like." And I say, I don't need you to put a picture on the action.
Mhm.
What would you like your life to feel like?
Yeah.
And I get them into their feeling. Once they get into their feeling, I said, well, and of the feeling, is there anything in your life now that or that you think might make you feel that way? And they'll say something, and I'll say, but I have never done that. I said, try it and see if it's authentically you or not.
Mhm.
And I had a guy on one of my sessions yesterday who was, and I thought a lot of our guests might get this, our listeners might get this. They've come to an age of retirement, and
Mhm.
their entire life they've defined themselves by their career, and now they're defining themselves by retirement, and they
Mhm.
don't know what it means, and
Right.
so they have no passion. So I started talking to this man yesterday, and I was like, and is there anything that you like to do? He says, well, I do have an entire studio in my house dedicated to photography.
Hello.
I'm, I'm, I'm like, so you spent a lot of time and money putting together a whole studio in photography. Sounds like a passion to me.
Yeah.
I think that's important, that you realize that you naturally gravitate to the things that are authentically you, because that's authentic.
Yeah. And then asking, I love that, that question of like, okay, well, what was it about that thing that you loved, or how did it make you feel? I always share this story uh, about Marcy Shimoff's father, who she's the author of Chicken Soup for the Women's Soul and the Happy for No Reason book. And she talks about her dad, and he was a dentist. And, when it came time to retire, he did it begrudgingly. He didn't want to retire. Uh, and so he started asking himself, what was it about dentistry that I loved? And he realized that it was that he enjoyed intricate work with his hands. So he started doing needlepoint in his 70s and started winning awards for his creations. And like at 82 or something like that, he started this huge, huge project, a Tree of Life. And, Marcy asked him, well, how long do you think this is going to take? And he's 82 or 83 or 84. Oh, about 5 years, probably.
Mm,
And what that was purposeful for him, and probably a spiritual practice for him, because he found his meaning, he found his joy, he found something that made him feel on purpose. and
right.
and that's what we need, right? And so your meditation helps you feel on purpose in the day. My yoga certainly grounds me, and it is a moving meditation, and then I follow it up with actual like sitting meditation. But all of those things help us really center back into our core and at least touch that authentic self, that who am I, that oneness, that connectedness to all that is living within us. And we just have to, if we want to, practice touching it.
Right. And when you shift from who am I to who I am, that's when you find your authentic self, and you find that space of creating the joyful life that you want. Um,
Beautiful.
and I think it is beautiful. I think it's a lovely space to be in, is to realize that life is constant motion, and the spiritual practices that we live in can totally give us a sense of purpose. It can give us a sense of feeling that joy, and there are times in your life that you don't know what you're going to do or where you're going to go, but you just keep following the joy,
Mhm.
because a lot of people will drop into following their anxiety from the past, or the fact that maybe their mother didn't treat them well, their father didn't treat them well, or and they live in the past rather than getting very present. One of the things you said was centering. Well, what that is getting very present.
Mhm.
It literally is coming back to the I am God moment and just being in this moment. And then when you bring that I am God moment and get very present in that moment, and then actively bring joy into it and love into it, then it's like, okay, this is great. You can make people laugh, and you can laugh and you can smile. And I sit here before we record a Spirit Cafe, and I'm like, how can I make Tamara laugh or smile today in the intro? And I just sit here and that's a spiritual practice for me, because
Yeah.
it's like I'm bringing something to you. And I always try to throw things that are out of the blue, just specifically because I think a spiritual practice is passing on a laugh, a smile, a joy,
Mhm.
and especially when it can be personalized.
Mhm.
To me, that is a spiritual practice. Personalize something. I walk into the grocery store, as I said, but I walk up to the counter and the lady's there, and it's always the same lady. Her name is Millie. It says it right on her tag. I say, Millie, how are you today? And she's great. We have a great conversation. Or I'll walk in one day and I'll notice that Millie's hair has changed. And Millie, your hair looks beautiful today. I love it. And she gets all, thank you. That is a spiritual practice.
Yeah.
Taking love and the spiritual essence of love and making it very present moment and sharing it very present moment. If you can, what's the word I'm looking for? You can put that into motion. I don't know what the other word I'm missing in my head right now, but if you can actively put that into motion in your present moment, that's a spiritual practice.
Mhm.
And it changes the world because you've changed their feeling as well.
Right. Yeah.
It's good. So
That's really good. Feels good to talk about this.
it's good. It's really good. I think it's a lovely conversation. I think that the more you live in those moments of, because most people, when you talk about spiritual practices, they talk about as you started, the candles and
Mhm.
all the stuff, and I'm like, I think that a lot of times you need to realize that spirituality is alive and in the moment, and it's in motion. Like I said,
Mhm.
water in nature that's going downhill, it's flowing fast and going downhill. That water that's in motion is full of life and oxygen, and it's
Mhm.
healthy. Take that same water and have it land in a puddle. It'll become stagnant and poisonous over time, and bugs will start laying their eggs in it, because life is about motion, life is about moving. And so we have to realize that we can sit stagnant and waste away and atrophy, or we can literally keep our motion going and say, what makes me joyful now? And where am I headed next? And then you find that's spiritual practice. That's a spiritual practice to do, looking for the next thing that makes you joyful.
Absolutely. I love it.
Well, this has been lovely.
It has. You've opened my mind to spiritual practices.
Well, good. I'm glad. I've closed my mind a lot on it. I'm kidding. um,
No.
uh, okay. So let me. I just got your chat, which I thought was funny. So why don't you take us out of this thing and give the audience your amazing closing thoughts.
Oh, thank you. We'll see if they're amazing. So we want to know what your spiritual practices are. And if, like me, your views of what a spiritual practice might be have shifted over the course of these last, 27 minutes. So really do share with us in the comments what your practice is, how it's evolved. Let's share some practices together so that we can all just get more spiritual.
Let's get
After all,
spiritual. I want to get spiritual. Let's get into spiritual. Let me hear
let
your
me hear
body
the
talk.
spirit talk.
There you go. This can never get monetized.
Oh, we haven't heard any of that song coming on. Oh, I like it.
Funny though, funny.
All right, I think that's enough, people. What's your thoughts on us doing a Let's Get Spiritual parody? Oh gosh, that was really funny. I'm gonna laugh for about 5 minutes after we say goodnight. goodbye. So we're going to say goodbye now so I can laugh for 5 minutes, which is another spiritual practice, isn't it? Laughter is so good. All right. We will talk to you next week. Can't wait for it. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for joining us at Spirit Cafe, a place where you can safely explore your spirituality without the guilt or dogma of religion. Please leave all comments on the Spirit Cafe podcast Facebook page or beneath our videos on YouTube.